Great. Thank you guys so much. All right, well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming to our third annual Small Business Workshop. We have folks both online and here in the room, so we ask speakers, and if you're asking a question, that you always have a mic with you so that the folks online can hear you. Some housekeeping items. Bathrooms are on this floor, so past the elevator, take a left, there's bathrooms. Our breakfast sponsor, Insperity, we have a great setup out there, so feel free to kind of come and go, grab some coffee, grab some food, and then lunch will be provided. For those online, as we get to the Q&A part, we ask that you put your questions in the chat, and we'll answer them via chat. We have an amazing lineup today. I'm sure you've seen, and you can scan the QR code here. As we go through the presentation, you'll see the agenda pop up as we go through. So you can scan the QR code and have it on your phone if you want, but amazing lineup of speakers, and several of them have agreed to stay for one-on-one sessions at the end of the day. So if you haven't had a chance to sign up when you checked in down below, we'll pull the sheets up, and if there's any blank spots, you can absolutely join for the one-on-one sessions this afternoon. If you don't get a slot, we've got a time built in for networking. We have a nice lunch break, and feel free to engage with the speakers throughout the day. Most of them are staying the entire day, so we thank you for that. And I think that's it for housekeeping items. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Julie Stark to introduce the Mid-Atlantic Tech Bridge.
Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to see so many people in the room, and we've got a whole bunch of people online, and they'll continue to be joining. So as Tina mentioned, I'm part of the Mid-Atlantic Tech Bridge, and I'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. So there's 3 directors of this particular tech bridge, and it's Joanne Pilcher, that is from NSWC Dahlgren Dam Neck activity in Virginia Beach. Gerald Walker, who I thought was in the room and has disappeared, so we'll all embarrass him when he comes in and say hi. And then myself, Julie, and I am from NSWC Carderock Norfolk Detachment, which also has offices here locally in Virginia Beach and Norfolk. And what we do as a tech bridge, there are 18 tech bridges throughout the world. We are co-located and having some meetings this week, so a number of different tech bridge people are here. Raise your hand if you're part of a tech bridge, my folks that are all sitting together here. What we do as the tech bridge, as a NavalX Tech Bridge, is that we serve as a super connector between businesses, organizations, industry partners, academic partners, to try to find the innovative technology solutions that we can get to our warfighters faster, more efficiently, and hopefully a little bit cheaper, and the key word there is faster. So that's why events like this are so great, to be able to identify additional small business partners. A number of the events that we do, like this one, are to make those connections with small businesses and businesses that might not know how to work for the government. So I encourage you to go on to the Mid-Atlantic Tech Bridge, the MATB LinkedIn page, and you can look through our previous events. Many of the events are recorded, and a lot of the things that are on LinkedIn serve as resources to small businesses and non-traditional partners to learn how to work with the government. So I don't know if we're on the schedule for later to meet with us, but like I said, 2 of the 3 directors from our tech bridge are here. There's about 6 other tech bridges from across the world that will be here throughout the day. And if you want to try to talk with any of us, I know we'll be here during the lunch break, and we're happy to talk to you about that. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it on. Oh, and a shout out to 757 Collab and the entire team that supports this. We do a lot of events with our tech bridge, and people say how great our tech bridge is. It is 98.5% due to 757 Collab and all the great work they do. We have the crazy ideas and help make the connections, but they actually organize and do all the really hard work to get it here. And so, Gerald, I just introduced you. So everybody, this is my colleague Gerald Walker from NAVAIR Atlantic. Also happy to talk with you throughout the day about the Tech Bridge activities. So now I will turn it over to our and Marco, what good good timing. Marco, another Tech Bridge director, he's from Naval Postgraduate School. So any of us from the Tech Bridge, we're happy to talk with you throughout the day. Please come up and chat about Tech Bridge and how you can get involved and how we can help you do more work with the government. So Eileen Brewer from 757 Collab will now talk to you a little bit about their organization. Thanks.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Good morning. I work in this building all the time. So if you have any questions about the building, come see me. It used to be Rice's department store. It's now called the Assembly Building. There's 10 different businesses that lease office space in the building, but there's also individual membership where you could pay for just being able to work from here. If you're working remotely and you don't want to be working from home all the time, you can work from here. That's about the building assembly. We are 757 Collab. We lease office space on the first floor. And what we offer out into the community are these resources. We have 757 Startup Studios, which is an incubator and a co-working space on the first floor here. We put in a new cohort every 6 months, and we'll have between 25 and 30 different startups. They get free co-working for 6 months, weekly programming, and unlimited mentorship. They don't have to be tech focused at this level. They can be any type of startup. It's just people that want to try to build a business, and we teach you how to do that. 757 Accelerate, I'm the executive director for the Accelerator program. It's an intensive 10-week accelerator program for businesses that have customers, have revenue, are growing rapidly, and need equity investment. The program is focused on investor readiness. We help you understand term sheets, convertible notes, cap tables, data rooms, due diligence, and pitch deck. At the end of the 10 weeks, we take you out to 4 different pitching events where you are in the room with accredited investors pitching to get investment. So by the time you finish the program in October, you have your data room and your pitch deck, you've met a bunch of investors, you have a round open, and you're running. We also have 757 Angels powered by Venture South. Those are angel investors who live here in Virginia, very focused and interested in investing in Virginia-based startups. Very technology focused. Once in a while, they'll take a beverage, but most of the time, they are technology focused. So if you are building a solution where you want equity investment, you can go directly and apply to 757 Angels. All 3 of these have their own websites, their own criteria, their own schedules, and their own programming. You don't have to do one before the other. The Accelerate and the Startup Studios is no cost to you at all. In fact, at the Accelerate program, we give you $20,000 non-dilutive. And but you are required to show up and do the work and turn in all of your work and as you go so that you are prepared to go in front of our investors at the end. 757 Angels might still have a nominal application fee to apply to them. They're talking about waiving that, so that might be gone by the time they open again. The Angels group invests 3 times per year. They just closed the applications for the spring round. They're dark in the summertime, and then they'll open back up again around September for the fall cohort. So, and then 757 Innovation Partnerships, that's where we get hired and contracted by other entities in the community to do programming for them. One of the examples is the Mid-Atlantic Tech Bridge. So we have a contract with them and we deliver all of their programming for them. We also do the same for Rise Resilience, which is a climate nonprofit, HRBRC, which is the Hampton Roads Biomedical Consortium. And so there's a bunch of other ways that we provide services to the community. So if you are aware of anywhere where entrepreneurship courses or mentoring and things like that are needed, please come and see me anytime throughout the day. And I think that's it for me.
All right, and next up, as I mentioned earlier, so our breakfast sponsor is Insperity and Miss Brenda. So we're going to invite her up to speak a little bit on Insperity before we get started.
Good morning, everyone. We're glad you're here. So first of all, we just joined as part of that innovative partnership here with the Collab because we're just so excited for all of the work that they're doing in the community with the small business community here in Hampton Roads. In Insperity, fundamentally, we're an HR service company. We've got a couple different solutions. We work with companies from 5 to 5,000. On the larger side, we just signed a partnership with Workday, which is really exciting. They were an Insperity client until they outgrew us, and now we're going to partner with them on the more enterprise side. But rather than talking to you about what Insperity does, I just wanted to bring a little bit of value this morning around strategic HR and what some of those resources need to look like for your small to mid-sized businesses. So if you're, from the Tech Bridge, I think that this is great information in terms of the small businesses that you're working with, and would love to get to know you guys better. And then if you have a small to mid-sized business and you're in a role where you can have some influence, right? Then it's just good food for thought to think about, how are you executing in this way? Wonderful. So I'm going to start with, so this is SHRM. SHRM is the governing body that certifies HR professionals throughout the nation. This is a report, a benchmarking, the human capital benchmarking report that they came out with in 2022. I'm going to start here because if I'm in your seat, I want to talk about the money, right? I want to know, how does this help my business grow, and how does it make us more profitable and drive more revenue in the business? So I find really interesting, look at the top line. It says revenue per full-time employee, okay? And we have percentiles here. So they did about 1,500 businesses, small businesses that they did a survey with. So 25th percentile, the median, 75th, and the average. I would say if you want to be competitive in your space, you need to at least be at the median, preferably pushing towards the 75th percentile. So then look at so revenue per full-time employee. It's saying, look at the 25th percentile, your business is going to drive $20,000 in revenue per full-time employee. If we move to the median, we get a massive jump, 106 grand a year per full-time employee in terms of revenue. Now look at the very bottom line, HR expense to full-time employee ratio, okay? So at the 25th percentile, we're only spending $435 on strategic HR services to drive that $20,000 in revenue. So then we take a jump to $1,000 a year that we're spending on our full-time employees in terms of strategic HR resources. And we'll get into what that means and the definition of that. And then all the way to the end, you can see it continues to scale. So there's an easy conclusion there, right? When you invest in your people, you invest in your revenue. An engaged employee ultimately is going to drive more revenue in your company. They're going to be a higher performer for you. And so how do we get there? So the question I'll ask is, what tools do you have in your toolbox, right? Whether you are a startup and you're bringing on your first 2, 3, 4, 5 employees, or you have 5,000 employees, you have a toolbox that you're using to execute HR. And the tools in that toolbox define how you drive that revenue per employee, right? It defines how you define an A player versus a B player versus a C player, and the processes you have in place to eliminate your C players and drive your B players to A players. Those are very important things when you're building an organization. The tools in your toolbox also define the culture. Like, what is it like to come and work in your organization? Do your employees wake up in the morning and think, oh gosh, it's Monday, I gotta go back to work. I gotta go sit in that cubicle and I really don't like what I'm doing? Or have they somehow connected, hey, we're on a mission here and we're on a vision. And when I come and I sit in that cubicle and I execute the things that are in my job description, I'm actually helping drive our company forward towards the mission and the vision and the values that we have. So I want you to kind of think about, it doesn't matter, like the HR conversation, it doesn't matter whether you have 5 employees or 5,000. You have challenges and you need to have employees who are motivated to drive revenue inside your organization. So we'll just take a look at the 3 things that every HR department needs, right? Like, okay, so you're telling me, hey, I need to think about the investment that I'm having around my people, but what do those dollars do for me? So number 1, every HR department needs to protect their company, right? It's unfortunate, but we live in a very litigious society. And particularly in this room, many of the organizations in here, as you scale, you're going to become a multi-state entity throughout the country. We work with over 1,000 government contractors in our book of business, okay? We understand the challenges that you guys are facing. We understand, look, we're heavy military community here. A lot of you will end up hiring in California, which is the most difficult market in America to hire in, right? It has more rules and regulations, and I can't tell you the number of business owners I meet with that say, oh, I never want to hire in California, or oh, I never want to grow past 50, because I know when I do that, there's all these rules and regulations. So the first thing is you need partners that can help you protect the business. Part of what Insperity and our other competitors do, right? There's plenty of players in the HR space, is we have a solution that can protect you 100% from labor fines throughout the country. We cannot protect you always from a lawsuit, but we can help hedge against that to protect the business. So think about the partners you have and how are they protecting your company. The second is you have to contain cost, right? Like one of the major costs around HR is healthcare. Healthcare is one of the most inflationary products in the market. Traditionally, we've done, you broker your healthcare through a broker, and they're wonderful people, but sometimes just in a very broken system where a business owner each year, you are either watering down your plans, you're eating the cost, or you're cost sharing that with your employees. And none of the situations create a win-win. So thinking creatively, how we can contain cost from an HR perspective, which we'll talk a little bit more on the next slide. And then the last one is strategic HR, which we'll revisit at the end. So 2 more slides, and then I'll cut you loose. So in most of the businesses I sit down with, their largest cost is employing their people, right? You've got the cost to pay them, you've got all the taxes on top of that, you've got benefits, you've got workers' comp, and then you have to think strategically, like, how am I going to get these folks engaged? How am I going to get them on the bus and towards the mission and accomplishing what we need to accomplish here to be a profitable business? So things that you need to think about around how you get a return on that investment. Workers' comp, obviously, you got to have that as a baseline to protect the business. The other thing I always drop in my presentations is consider EPLI insurance. I'm always surprised how many businesses are undereducated in this arena. EPLI stands for Employer Practices Liability Insurance. It is different than your workers' comp. Your workers' comp covers accidents, your physical health body. EPLI is the only insurance that covers a business from employee-related offenses. So harassment, wrongful termination, when an employee says, hey, I want to take you to court because X, Y, and Z, this is the insurance that kicks in to help cover your business there. The second area where you're spending a bunch of money is actually paying your people. And this is the area where it's complex, right? There's a lot of compliance. It goes all the way down to the locality, right? Here in Virginia, we don't have locality taxes, but you want to hire in New Jersey, Alabama, Pennsylvania, California. It gets real dicey real quick, all the rules and regulations that a business owner has to keep up with, and it changes rapidly. It changes year over year. And then the last thing is benefits, which we talked a little bit about already, but these are all areas that as a business owner, you need to be considering, how do I contain the cost in these areas while also motivating my employees? So then we'll go back and revisit the strategic HR conversation. Or I just took us back to the same report. When we think about strategic HR, what we're thinking about is things like, how do I do performance reviews? Do those performance reviews, do they tie into my job grading? And do they create merit-based increases depending on performance? And if performance is lacking, then does that review process then bleed into a training and development session to either help bring that employee up to the level that they need to be, or to protect the businesses, maybe you need to exit that employee from the organization. Other areas that we think of is compensation, right? And strategic HR. What percentile are you compensating your employee at? You guys understand that somebody could be sitting in the seat today working for you, and tomorrow they could be sitting in the same seat the next day working for someone else. So how do you know that you're competitive? Or when you're building your fringe rates, are you able to do it down to the penny? Things like that are strategic resources that an HR partner can bring to the table, whether that's us or someone else. So hopefully just a couple of minutes just to get you thinking about, okay, how can you consider human resources? It's unfortunate. I think a lot of times our executives and our business leaders are kind of conditioned to think, okay, what is the cheapest way out? But we want you to contain your costs, but we also want you to consider that the dollars you spend, are they really producing the engagement to drive your company forward? So my coworker Bethany wasn't able to be here with me today, but here in spirit. But here's our contact information. I have a couple little items I'll leave at the front, so if anybody wants to pick them up, and then I'll hang out for the day too. So if you want to talk HR, I'm happy for that. Or tennis or soccer, those are my favorite sports. So I can always have a big conversation around those too. So thank you guys. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Brenda. And next, I'm going to have Mr. Jason Schroepfer come up, and he is going to walk us through both Department of the Navy SBIR sitter and specifically with NAVSEA. So Jason, over to you, sir.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I am Jason Schroepfer, and thankfully they spelled my name correctly. Usually doesn't happen. I'm the program manager for Naval Sea Systems Command, SBIR, and STTR programs. This first part of the presentation covers Navy, SBIR, and STTR in general. Typically, the director of the Navy program would come down and give that presentation, but today is his last day in federal service. He is retiring, so he asked if I could cover. Just real quick before we get into the meat and potatoes here, how many people are actually familiar with SBIR, STTR, or is it a completely new concept? Okay, most folks are. Paul raises his hand, of course. Okay, next slide, please. If you're familiar with the program, then you basically know what the intent of it is. It's to stimulate technological innovation, working with small businesses that the SBA defines as less than 500 people, employees, for this program specifically. Meet the federal R&D needs. So whatever in my case, the NAVAIR or NAVSEA needs or has a problem with, that's where we're going to focus. We look at underutilized states, economically disadvantaged companies, veteran-owned, women-owned, those types of companies we tend to focus on. We also try to work with, pull in the academia, working with universities and other research institutions, specifically on the STTR side, but there's no limitation on working with academia on SBIR. Next slide. This is a legally mandated program. It's not the typical acquisition program that has to get funded every year through Congress or through the Pentagon. We are stood up by law. We get reauthorized every several years. The most recent reauthorization was in 2022, and the program is authorized through the end of next fiscal year, at which point Congress is going to have to reauthorize us again. There has been discussion about making it a permanent program, but so far that hasn't taken. So every several years we're reauthorized. So we are a legally mandated program that the Small Business Administration runs. So SBA has been tasked to basically govern the program. So they put out a policy directive that kind of lays out, how the program is to be run and what the rules and regulations are. So those are the two governing documents. Next slide. This is the organization, as I said, SBA at the top. They're the ones that actually run the program. And then a lot of different federal agencies participate. Being with the Navy, obviously I fall under DOD. So you can see the hierarchy, SBA, DOD, Navy. And then across the bottom, there's 8 different organizations within the Navy. Myself is NAVSEA. My counterpart, Kristi, is in the back of the room. She'll come up after me. NAVAIR, but all of the other systems commands within the Navy, including the Marine Corps. And then we also have somebody that kind of oversees the STTR at a higher level, even though each one of us at the lower level does maintain a program for STTR. So that's the federal organization. Next. A couple of things that make the Navy program unique. We heavily focus on acquisition pull. And by that, I mean, we talk to our technologists, we talk to the fleet, we talk to the warfighters to find out what they need help with. And then we'll write topics to address those needs and solicit proposals from industry. So we are doing an open topic last year or this year. So throughout the course of this reauthorization, so through next year at least, we are going to be participating in what we're calling open topics, which is where industry basically comes to us with their ideas, and then we decide how to implement them. That is counter to the way that we usually operate, because like I said, we usually talk to the warfighters, figure out what they need, and then go out and find it. We don't typically fund just good ideas to see where it's going to go. There's benefit to both, and we're kind of learning as we go, but that's the way that we generally do things. Is we'll work with the acquisition community all the way from topic development all the way through the various phases of the program, and hopefully to transition to address specific needs so that we can commercialize your technology once we get to that point. So we always have the end in mind when we're working through this. Centralized management, decentralized execution. I can't speak too clearly on how the other syscoms operate, but by this, at least in my organization, I have a management office. I've got a staff of about 50 folks that help me to run the NAVSEA program. But the decentralized aspect is that we have technology managers affiliated with each of the PEOs within NAVSEA and the headquarters and directorates that focus on specific products. So whether it be aircraft carriers, submarines, unmanned surface combatants, or integrated warfare systems. So these folks work specifically with the acquisition community in those organizations to address the needs of that particular group. So at the working level, we're kind of scattered across, all of the PEOs and across the countries. We have people in the warfare centers as well. But it's all kind of overseen from a centralized location in my office. And I think most of the other Navy syscoms kind of operate the same way. We do provide a lot of different programs to support our small businesses throughout the process. Specifically, we try to engage in phase 2 because that's, the bigger portion of the program, and it's a longer duration where we can actually do a little more help. A couple of the programs I saw that they are on the agenda later today, so I'm not going to get into them much. But one thing we do is the STP, the Cyber Transition Program. We've been doing that for about 25 years, and that actually helps small companies that may not have a lot of expertise in, say, marketing and that kind of thing. So they actually coach them up, and Paul's going to talk to it a little bit later, but it's an 11-month program that basically helps you get ready for commercializing and helps with things that you may not, have inherent in your company, especially if you're like a 3 or 4 person shop, working out of the basement. You probably don't have a marketing director. You may not have a staff accountant. So they'll kind of walk you through and coach you up on things like that. The DON-SEC, that is the Cyber Experimentation Cell. I see Kelly in the back. He's going to talk to that one later. But that's to assist companies to get their technology actually into Navy test activities, like RIM packs and other test events. To actually put your product on a ship to test it. So we'll go more into that. The transition managers, I already talked to that a little bit. We help kind of coach you and partner you up with the right people and get you talking to who you need to know throughout the process so that you are ready for transition when the time comes. And the last thing that I want to see is, after we've been working with you for 5 or 6 years through phase 1, through phase 2, I don't want to be surprised by success. So once we get to that point, I want it to be a smooth handoff where I can give you to the acquisition community and say, okay, here's this company that we've been growing for the last several years, this technology that we've been working with them to develop. It's at a stage where you can start to implement it into your systems. So I want that to be a smooth transition and not so much a surprise like it is sometimes, unfortunately. But let's see. On the bottom there, VCs, that's kind of a new thing for us. We've just been starting to work with venture capitalists over the last, say, 2 years. Traditionally, we didn't do a whole lot, but we are starting to work with companies that are majority owned by VCs. And we're also starting to work with VCs to help companies similar to what we do on the Navy side to transition within the Navy to help companies commercially transition. So a lot of venture capitalists will get involved in that aspect of it to take you outside of the government. And just a couple of numbers on the bottom there. Like I mentioned, we're looking for socially and economically underrepresented companies. And we're always trying to find new innovative companies that we haven't worked with yet because you never know when the next great idea is going to come around. So every year we have about 21% from the underrepresented and disadvantaged companies participate in the program. And the 41% is actually very impressive, to me at least. I like to see new companies joining the mix and getting involved with us. So roughly 40% every year of companies that submit proposals to our program have never worked with us before. So our outreach efforts and doing things like this and coming to events like this to kind of spread the word are working, and that's fantastic. Next, please. We just had a meeting on this slide last week, and I did not update it. Big bumper sticker across the bottom is things will vary depending on which SysCom you work for, but generally speaking, this is how we operate across the Navy. This is a three-phase program. Phase one is small dollars and a short contract just to kind of test your theories. It's a feasibility concept. So we generally do $240,000 firm fixed price contracts that are a year long. Typically, they're broken into a 6-month base and a 6-month option to just kind of see if your idea will work in a military application. At the end of that base period, we'll evaluate your final report. You can submit an optional initial phase two proposal. We used to select companies out of phase one to move to phase two. Now everybody is offered the opportunity to submit their phase two proposal. You don't have to, but obviously if you don't, you're not going to go to phase two. So we'll review all of that and decide, after we evaluate that information, which company is going to move to phase two. At that point, we'll typically exercise your option to keep you employed and keep you working for another 6 months while we're working out the contract. Then we move into phase two. That ranges anywhere from 1.5 years to 3 years typically. The statutory limit right now is $2 million. So like I said, depending on SysCom, it may vary. I usually fund all the way up to the ceiling. So I go 3 years, $2 million within my group. Some of the others vary a little bit, and that is to continue your development and actually get to a prototype phase, to something that we can actually test, that we can, hopefully hand off to the acquisition side. We can do second phase twos, and there's a lot of variety in here. And I know the Air Force is in the room somewhere. So thanks to the Air Force, we are rebranding our second phase two effort. We're calling it Catapult. But this encompasses all aspects of phase two, whether it be a reach back, and by that I mean reaching back to an older topic, because once you're in the program, you're in forever. We can go back to a phase one that was awarded, 30 years ago. And if there's a need for that technical solution now, we can reach back to that and award a phase two contract or a phase three contract on it. It also covers transfers from other groups. We do that all the time where, NASA may have developed something that has an applicability for NAVAIR. NAVAIR will reach out and ask the NASA or whoever the other group is, ask them if they can take ownership of the project, the topic. We'll transfer it over administratively and then do a second phase two. And then the CRP, which is actually started off as a pilot program, but it's a commercialization readiness program. We lovingly call it the phase 2.5. It's kind of to bridge the gap between phase two and transition. A lot of times we require something to demonstrate interest from the acquisition side in that phase in CRP, usually in the terms of matching money. It just tells us that, yeah, these guys are serious. They're going to bring their money to the table. We're going to match whatever they put in to kind of help finalize the project or get it to transition, because you're not quite there yet. So all of the second phase twos are now called Catapult. And then obviously the ultimate goal of the program is commercialization, whether it be within the Navy, within DoD, within the government, or commercial. While I don't have any direct interest in that, it's definitely something that we encourage and we want to see. If you sell your product to Walmart, fantastic. Doesn't benefit me, but it does benefit you and it benefits the program. So we want you to do that. while you're also trying to put it on a carrier. Um, one of the biggest successes, and I think it actually came out of Army, but anybody that's familiar with those little robotic vacuum cleaners, the Roomba, that started off as an SBIR project. It was a mine detecting system. Somebody within the company had the brilliant idea to, hey, let's take off that mine detector and just put a little suction pump on it. And now it's one of the biggest companies in the world, selling it everywhere. It's commercial, not really military anymore, but that's how it started. So we definitely want you to pursue that. We do have programs in place to kind of help you, figure out how to do that and put you in connection with folks that can help. So that's the program in a nutshell, 3 phases. And there's a lot of nuance in phase 2, a lot of different things that we can do, a lot of different options, and we can get into more of that later. And I know we're going to have a Q&A session afterwards, so pick our brains on that. Next, please. In the last round of proposals, or the last broad agency announcement solicitation that we put out, these were kind of the focus areas. This is not like a documented thing that we're going to target these areas every time, but this is just kind of most recently what we've been looking at. So if you work in any of these realms, then there's probably SBIR work for you. We do have other things. I mean, especially in this area, anybody that's been around the Navy knows, paint, weather, coatings and treatments, all of the simple things we also do. So any kind of new technology that'll make the ship last longer, reduce maintenance time, as well as, the big buzzwordy, AI and ML and all that kind of cybersecurity and all that important stuff. We do a lot of the basics as well. But just to kind of let you know where we've been focused in the last several years, this is kind of where we've been putting most of our eggs, but we do other things as well. Next. A couple of things that are unique to the Navy program. I already mentioned STP and SEC. And I'm not going to go through these in any kind of great detail because the experts are in the back of the room and they're talking this afternoon. But like I mentioned, the transition program is an 11-month program where business consultants will work with the small business to help them transition their product. And then at the end of the 11 months, they actually do like a coming out party where we'll give you booth space at a major Navy event like Sea Air Space or West out in San Diego. And then Kristi and I actually kind of co-chair a Navy NAVSEA and NAVAIR joint event that focuses on these companies. So we give you the table, give you space, and let you kind of market your product and your ideas and your concepts to a huge audience. And then the experimentation cell, and Kelly will go into this more again, but that is to assist you in testing your technology on Navy platforms in a relevant environment. Next slide. These two are reasonably new, and this is more focused on the commercial aspect that I was talking about earlier. So Navy launch is very similar to the STP program, but the target is a commercial marketplace as opposed to a Navy marketplace. So again, multiple months, educational program to kind of work with the company to help them get into the commercial marketplace. And then private capital education, I also mentioned this with the venture capitalists and everything. This is brand new, we just kicked it off. It's kind of more of a boot camp style, 3-phase educational program to help you work with venture capitalists, help you find them and get investors to kind of help you out. More information obviously is on the link. Next. And that is the end of the overall Navy portion, but here's some useful links. And then we'll jump into a couple of NAVSEA specific, my actual program. Next slide, please. And this is all available, so if you don't have a chance to get a picture, don't worry. Next. So within NAVSEA, if you remember back the kind of hierarchical slide I showed earlier, there's 8 different syscoms in the Navy that all meet the legal definition of having to operate a program. So NAVSEA and NAVAIR are the 2 largest syscoms within the Navy. And we're both here today. So within NAVSEA, like I said, we have 5 different program executive offices. So we have PEO aircraft carriers, IWS, which is Integrated Warfare Systems, unmanned surface combatants, ships, subs, and then kind of a catch-all off to the right there that Vince operates. That's all of the directorates within NAVSEA, which includes like the shipyard support, things like that. So those 6 folks are kind of the gatekeepers, if you will, for NAVSEA. They're the ones that run the portfolios. They're actually technological experts. Most of them are engineers. I am not. I'm a business guy. I don't speak nuts and bolts, but these guys do. So they actually manage the portfolios that affiliate with each one of those 6 groups. And then I have 2 deputies, one for operations, one for technical issues, and of course a contracts and financial management wing as well. But that's the NAVSEA organization. Next slide. And our general timeline is we work for a long time to come up with the topics. Like I said, we talk to the fleet, we talk to the warfare centers to find out exactly where they need assistance. So we go through a 6 to 9 month process, kind of working through that to develop our topics. That's something that we do entirely. Industry is not allowed to write topics. By law, it has to be the government writing it. We don't really solicit inputs, but we do listen. So if you have great ideas, you talk to people, it'll eventually make its way up, but we have to write it. And then we go into the BAA and the source selection process. The BAA, the broad agency announcement. Sometimes we call it a solicitation, but that's basically the announcement that goes out in FedBiz Ops that you guys all respond to and provide your proposals. So from release of the topic to getting the proposal to evaluating the proposal is typically a 4 to 6 month process to actually get to the point where we've made a selection on who we're going to award to. Then we go into the 3 phases as mentioned before. The structure along the bottom is specific to NAVSEA. Like I said before, some of the other syscoms vary. I know that Kristi and her group are doing a little bit more in the phase 2 arena where they're trying to do longer initial periods of performance. They do different funding levels, but she can talk to that in more detail. But for NAVSEA, we generally just keep it simple. We just do, 1 year, 240K phase 1. If you're selected for a phase 2, we go 3 years, 2 million. And then if we do a second phase 2, something that falls under the catapult realm, we'll do another 3 years for another 2 million of SBIR funds, and then 2 million in matching. So that could be like a $4 million contract. And then phase 3, that's the Wild West. All the rules go out the window. Company size no longer applies. I mean, General Dynamics and Northrop Grumman have phase 3 contracts. There is no limitations on the number of awards you can have, the size of awards, the duration. It could be a $100,000 3-month contract to just fix a little component in something, or it could be a $100 billion contract to completely re-outfit the entire fleet with whatever your widget is. So all of the rules are gone in phase 3. That's where we want to get you. And like I mentioned earlier, at least in the Navy, we're focused on that from the day we start putting pen to paper in writing the topics. We have the target in mind, where we want you to get, which program office is going to pick it up, who's going to fund it. We start working with the Pentagon early to make sure funding is in place, that when you do get there, the government is ready. Next slide, please. Broad agency announcements. Like I said, after we spend 6 to 9 months writing a topic, this is how we communicate it to you. And there's talk about this changing at the DoD level. They're talking about maybe kicking us down to only 2. But right now, the standard process, there's 3 general BAAs a year. At NAVSEA, we tend to focus on the top one, the point 1 and A. The point 1 is SBIR, the A is STTR. So that's what the A and the B mean up there. But every year, we'll release 3, basically a 3-month process where we call it pre-release. The name doesn't really make sense because it's released. You can see it. You can start working on your proposal to submit against it. But during that pre-release period, the big benefit there is that you, as a proposing small business, are actually allowed to speak directly with the person that wrote that topic. So if you think you have a solution in mind, but you're not quite sure and you want to figure out, okay, what is it that they're actually asking for? You can call the guy up and ask him, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Am I on the right path? Or, should I kind of tweak my proposal a little bit to specifically address what you're looking for? So during that pre-release period, typically 30 days, you can talk directly to the person that wrote it. That way you're not giving up your secret sauce, and gives you the opportunity to kind of narrow in on exactly what you're doing. The open period, again, we're still taking proposals. During this period, you can still ask questions. The big difference here is that we use something called Citus. It's basically a blog. You ask your question publicly via the web. All of your competitors can read your question, and then the topic authors and the technical specialists that are focused on this project will respond. But again, it's open to the public. So all of your competitors will not only see what you're asking, they'll also see what the government's response is. So I encourage everybody, take advantage of the pre-release, talk to them privately. That way you're not, kind of opening up the curtain and showing your competitive, your solution to your competitors. And then close, obviously, we stop taking proposals, and that's when we go into evaluation mode. We have 30 days, I think, from the close date to actually review all of the proposals. Depending on how we write it, sometimes we only get one proposal submitted. Sometimes we get several hundred. So it varies. Some of them are very narrowly focused, so there's not very many people that propose to it, but others, like the open topic, for example, we'll get hundreds of proposals. So it's a very time-consuming process on our end, but at the end of the day, what we typically do, at least within my group, is we'll target 3 awardees. It's not a hard number. Sometimes we only get 1 or 2. Sometimes we'll do 5 or 6, but we'll do generally 3 to 4 phase 1 awards per topic that we put out, regardless of how many proposals we get. Next slide, please. And just kind of comparison notes on the 2 different types of topics that I mentioned. The conventional, the standard topic is the one that I've been talking the most about because that's the one that we've been doing for 40 years. And that's the one that I'm very familiar with. Looking to solve a specific Navy need. With the transition in mind, this is kind of everything in a nutshell that I've been talking about. The open topic is new to us. We're doing that more broadly to solve mission critical needs, not specifically, hey, widget X and component Y is not working. I need somebody to come up with a solution. This is more, we'd like to extend the range of our communications. So somebody will come up with a good idea for that. And we kind of are looking for more technologically mature solutions in the open topic. Because what we would like to do is take something that already exists and just figure out a way to militarize it. How do we take this thing that you guys are already successful at and have already proven and make it useful on a ship? So that's kind of where the difference between the 2 is. So one is a very specific demand signal from the Navy on what we're looking for, and the other one is much broader, just to kind of advance the mission, but not nearly as specific. And then I already talked about the bumper sticker at the bottom, developed by the government. In the past, we used to have a lot more interaction with industry actually suggesting topics, but that actually changed in the reauthorization, right, Kristi? Yeah, where they actually put it in the law that industry cannot write topics. So it's illegal for us to have you guys write topics. So now we're doing it. Next slide. This is the NAVSEA program kind of by the numbers. This is for FY23. So we do have a fairly substantial budget. Last year we were right around $150 million. We had 40 different topics that we put out on the street to get companies working on. The little pie charts in the middle probably don't mean a whole lot to you, but that's kind of how they broke up on the left within the 6 pillars in my organization, which PEOs were kind of running those. And then by technological domain on the right side, that may be of more interest. General warfighting requirements was the bulk of it, and that covers a wide range of different things. But the others are a little more specific, obviously like cyber and AI and ML and things like that. Small piece of the pie, but that's kind of where we were focused with the FY23 topics. And then the awards on the bottom. Like I said, we did have 40 topics out there. Almost 1,000 proposals came in from small businesses that we took a look at. And of those, we did 360 contracting actions. Funding. We did a lot more contracting actions, but that was, changing the principal investigator, or extending the period of performance, or doing administrative stuff. But 360 actions to actually give money to small businesses to go through almost $150 million last year. Next slide. Talked about phase 3. That's where we want to get you. And this is probably the most misunderstood aspect of the program because it runs counter to most of what the government does, especially in the contracting arena. A lot of contract officers and contract specialists, when they hear SBIR phase 3, they don't understand it. They're taught from when they're little baby contracting specialists, when they're going through their training, that you always compete, always compete. And data rights are something that we do not want companies to keep. Government wants them. So that's what's beaten into them from birth. So when we get to phase 3 and we say, no, you have to award to these guys, sole source, because we've already met all of the competition requirements. You're supposed to go to the original developer to the greatest extent practicable. And that word salad basically translates to, is the company still in business? Are they capable of doing the work? And do they want to do the work? If the answer to those 3 is yes, then we have to go to you by law. But getting the rest of the government to understand that is a challenge, so that's why I put this up here. So when you guys are talking to whoever it may be in the government about, hey, I'm a cyber company, and I heard that XYZ program is looking for this. Don't compete it. Give it to me. This will hopefully give you a little bit of ammo. If the government does not do that and they decide to kind of skirt the rules, the SBA can step in and terminate that contract while we go back and analyze everything. And it's a painful process. Not easy at all. It's very time consuming, but that is your leverage. Is SBA, let them know, you're being misused because they can and will step in and say, nah, put a pause on that. You guys are breaking the rules. Yeah, in the phase 1 process, that's competitive. The phase 2 selection process is competitive. So by meeting those 2, competing in those 2 rounds, you've satisfied all competition. So sole source for the rest of your lives, as long as you can tie it back to an SBIR topic. And the key phraseology that's in the policy directive, for those of you that haven't read it, it's actually a fairly short document. It's only like 35 pages, but it lays out the entire program. Highly encourage you to read it. There's a phrase in there that says extends from, derives from, or concludes prior SBIR funded efforts. That is the definition of a phase 3. So if it finishes your phase 1 or phase 2 work, if it is a derivation of your phase 1 or phase 2 work, or if it concludes or extends, further development, by definition, by law, it's a phase 3. Next. Oh, and one of the other things that we've been doing at the Navy level, we have a pretty broad outreach program, but specifically within NAVSEA, I've really been ramping this up for the last couple of years. Got a completely dedicated staff that does nothing but outreach. My local rep, Sean, for those of you that don't know him, he lives here, he works here, retired senior chief, so he's very connected with the community down here. He is my direct representative in the Norfolk Tidewater area. We have folks all across the country co-located with the NAVSEA warfare centers. They're in connection with the tech bridges across the country. They're working with small business development councils, with colleges and universities, with chambers of commerce, anybody that they can think of to tap into in those local ecosystems to kind of spread the word about the program, educate both government and industry. We do have, still in development, we've got phase 1 rolled out, but we're doing like a 3-tiered training program, depending on who you are and what kind of information you need. But we're rolling that out across the country to anybody that'll listen to us, because kind of the whole theme here is that phenomenal program, been around for over 40 years. Sister program, STTR, has been around for over 30, but most people don't know about it. Even within, NAVSEA. Most people are, oh, I never knew that. I didn't know we had a SBIR program. And it's like, yeah, I sit across the hall from it. I've been working on this for 15 years, and nobody knows. And when they do know, it's often misunderstood. So we're trying to change that. We do all of the big events, and we run into some pretty phenomenal people. Secretary of the Navy, and then the Undersecretary of the Navy at the big ones. But we love coming to things like this as well, smaller community type things. A couple of weeks, I'm going to be going out to Crane. We do this. And then, like I said, we've got our regional reps, like Sean and his counterparts all over the place that can get you whatever you need, sit in on your events, and provide training, connect you to the right people within the Navy. So tap into those resources. Always have an open door, especially for small businesses. I usually answer my phone, but you can certainly talk to folks like Sean, and he'll definitely get you answers and point you in the right direction. I think that's all I have for the Navy side and NAVSEA side. Kristi's going to come up, and then I think we have Q&A after that.
Thank you, Jason. And now we have Miss Kristi DePriest coming up to talk NAVAIR. And just for the folks in the room and online, we will be sharing the slide deck and the recording. So we are recording this, so you don't have to take pictures. You can if you want, but we will be sending out the slide deck and the recording. Kristi, over to you. And we will do Q&A. So we'll bring Jason back up here, and Kristi will stay up here after this, and we'll do Q&A across Department of the Navy, NAVAIR, and NAVSEA.
Hi, I'm Kristi DePriest. I am the counterpart for Jason for NAVAIR. He's NAVSEA, I'm NAVAIR. We are always in a competition for who has the largest SBIR program. I think he's winning right now, but we go back and forth every year depending on the overall Navy budget. So I knew Jason was going to really cover the basics of SBIR and how the program works. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about NAVAIR as an organization. And then also just some specifics about our SBIR program. Next slide. So NAVAIR, we are the organization that develops, acquires, support aircraft, weapons, and related systems that are sustained at sea. So we are specifically focused on aviation at sea and all of the difficulties that come with operating in that type of an environment. We are also responsible for Marine Corps aircraft as well. So our goal is always to deliver those capabilities to enable the fleet to compete, deter, and win, tonight, tomorrow, in the future. And an important point is also at a cost that we can afford. And so that is where the SBIR program comes in. We do find that small businesses are often not only some of the most innovative industry partners that we work with, but also some of the most cost effective. And that's why we really try to reach out to small businesses and incorporate them in our industry base as much as we can. Next slide. These are the priority and focus areas that we have with our current Admiral. And the basic highlights are that we want to deliver integrated warfighting capability. I know this is really hard to read. Develop our workforce and strengthen partnerships. The focus areas you see at the bottom are speed, affordability, availability, and outcomes. We want to make sure we're investing in the right technologies that are actually going to have an impact on our capabilities and that we're able to get them fielded as quickly and efficiently as possible. And once again, this is an area that we find working with small businesses definitely increases our ability to do that. Next slide. So this is a little bit about NAVAIR, where we're located and what we do. We have 4 main product lines. We have tactical aircraft, we have Air ASW aircraft and special mission aircraft, which includes rotorcraft. We have unmanned aircraft and strike weapons. And then we also have common systems training, and it's not on here, but the JSF is also its own program right now. So these products are divided into what we call PEOs, Program Executive Offices for NAVAIR. And all of your topics will come with a sponsor in one of those program offices. We have multiple sites. We've got 2 divisions within NAVAIR. We've got the aircraft division, which is headquartered in Pax River, which is where I am. And then we also have the warfare division, which is out in China Lake. And then we also have multiple FRCs. These are fleet readiness centers where we do all of our maintenance and repair for the aircraft. Next slide. This is our operating construct. As I mentioned, you have the PEOs there across the top and the warfare centers and the FRCs supporting the PEOs on the bottom. The main thing to know about this is, as Jason mentioned, because we do that technology pool, we have a customer already in mind for your technology once we advertise the topic. That customer is in one of those blue boxes. They are in one of those PEOs that is associated with a platform, a program office. However, your TPOC is most likely going to be in one of those yellow boxes. Those are the subject matter experts, the scientists and engineers that are doing the research and development, the test and evaluation on behalf of those program offices. So it's really important to understand that distinction and make sure that you have a good relationship with both the TPOC, who is going to be the day-to-day point person that you're talking to, but also understand who is that person in the blue box, who is the sponsor that I'm eventually trying to transition my technology to. Next slide. So the aircraft division, as I mentioned, is headquartered in Pax River. We also have locations in Lakehurst and Orlando. Lakehurst is primarily aircraft landing systems, and Orlando is primarily training systems. But you can see here all the other types of things: the air vehicles, propulsion and power, avionics, and sensors, crew systems, support systems. Most of that work is done in Pax River. Next slide. Okay. The weapons division, as I mentioned, is out in China Lake, and this is where we do all the research and development, test and evaluation, and integration of our weapon systems. And since she's here, I'll go ahead and point out Tammy, who happens to be here today, who is our lead SBIR coordinator for the weapons division. So she's here all the way from China Lake. Next slide. And then the fleet readiness centers. Again, this is where we're doing all of our maintenance and repair of the aircraft. And this is a really key area that we integrate a lot of SBIR technology, is in those fleet readiness centers. So they have a lot of work that we do with them to leverage what small businesses can do and integrate that. Next slide. these are our areas of interest that we have at NAVAIR. Again, I know you probably can't read that, but you will get the brief. And really the point of this slide is just to show how broad our investments really are at NAVAIR. It may be easy to think that the technology that your company is working on is not applicable to Navy aircraft. If you've never thought of Navy aircraft as a customer before, but we really do have a broad base of technologies serving every component of the aircraft, logistics, the pilot, human safety, training. It's a very broad area of technologies that we invest in. So just to give you a little bit of an idea, if you see yourself anywhere on this slide, there's probably going to be a NAVAIR topic that would apply to you. Next slide. This is our program, just like Jason had, and like I said, we're just a little bit under. I think you said 150. I think we're right at just under that, like 148. So, yes. So we still have a fairly large and robust program. We had 41 SBIR topics in 23 and 13 STTR topics. In 23, you can see the number of contracts that we did, and you can kind of see down at the bottom how the budgets fluctuate every year. The left side is the SBIR budget, the right side is our STTR budget, and they basically fluctuate with the amount of the overall defense budget, and then the amount of the overall Navy budget tends to go up and down a bit. On the right, you can see which program executive offices sponsored the topics that we put forward, and then the subject matter experts, what the STTR topics were in. So one of the things that we have been doing is our STTR topics, which are earlier stage basic and applied research. They generally are looking for technology that it's a little bit too early to know exactly what platform it would be integrated in. So those ones are actually managed by our warfare centers that are closer to kind of the cutting edge of what is the R&D that we want to be doing. That might be something that the program offices, because they're worried about meeting requirements and what do I have to do to have my aircraft available and ready. It's things that they might not yet be thinking of that might be a little bit farther down the line. Next slide. So this is our award structure. We start very much like Jason with the phase 6-month phase 1, 6-month phase option for a total of $240K. Our standard phase 2 contract is $1.3 million, and we do that with a $1 million base and a $300K option. And then in the blue box is what we have typically called our CRP strategies, but is being rebranded as the Catapult program. So this is what Jason mentioned in his brief, and I told him I did not get a chance to update my slides either, so I won't tell on you if you don't tell on me. But we are going to start referring to that part as the Catapult program, and that is where we take and do additional SBIR investment into a phase 2 contract. We used to only be able to do one phase 2, and then it was basically up to the company to figure out how to get to phase 3. And it's not surprising that after that original phase 2, often the technology wasn't quite where it needed to be. It hadn't been tested or demonstrated in a relevant environment. So it was really difficult to get a program office to commit funding to transitioning that technology because the full research and development work had not been completed. So that's where these options come in. And this can be something as simple as an expansion that we put on your existing phase 2 to give you some additional funding to go to a test and demonstration event, or it can be a whole new 2-year, $1.3+ million contract to continue the work. And then again, ultimately, the goal is to get to phase 3 with all of those advantages that Jason talked about. One thing that we have really been emphasizing at NAVAIR is demonstration and experimentation. As Jason mentioned, you guys are going to hear from the Navy experimentation cell later today. We work very closely with them in trying to make sure each of our phase 2 projects has some type of event where they can demonstrate their technology. That often requires additional funding, and to make sure that, excuse me, to make sure that we have you set up on the right timeline to be able to meet one of these events. Next slide. These are the upcoming BAAs that we have. The 24.2 is open now. That pre-released on the 17th of April. As Jason mentioned, this is a very key time frame. Between now and the 15th of May is when you can make those phone calls to the topic authors and ask them questions or provide them with some information about your proposed idea. Thank you so much. And get some answers. So that's a very key period because oftentimes the topics may be written in a way that is not intuitively understandable for you, and you have the opportunity to ask questions. What do you mean by this? What does this mean? What platform is this envisioned for, so that you can do additional research and make sure that you know what the topic author is looking for. You can also provide, some ideas about your technology and say, is this the direction that you're interested in, so that you know when you put a proposal together that it has a good chance of getting awarded. So like I said, for 24.2, we have 20 SBIR topics out there and we have 6 STTR topics out there. So encourage you to look up those. That BAA will close on the 12th of June. That's when your proposal would have to be due. We also will be doing another open topic. Jason mentioned these. These are much broader topics, generally associated not just with a specific technology, but a mission area that could encompass multiple technologies. That will be out on the 13th of June and will close on the 14th of August. Next slide. And then finally, these are just some ways that you can connect with NAVAIR on social media to stay up to date with what we have going on as an organization. Next slide. I think that's it, yes. And then finally, if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out to me, and I think we'll be available for some Q&A right now.
Okay. All right, well, thank you, Kristi and Jason. We're grabbing some mics so that when we are doing Q&A here in the room, everyone can hear us online. So again, to those folks online, if you have questions, I know there's one question in there, please put them in the chat and we'll get them answered by Kristi and Jason. So first off, thank you again. So we're going to open up questions and answer in the room first, and then we'll go online. So if you have a question, raise your hand. We'll make sure we get you a mic so that those folks online can hear you. So, oh, and Alex is already there. So go ahead, please.
Hi. First question, kind of general, and I think I know the answer to it. Is all SBIR funding come from RDT&E money, or does any of it come from procurement?
Yes, but it's all RDT&E. It's extramural R&D budget. So what that means is any money that is leaving the government. So whatever the Navy budget is, we'll pay for our people and programs that are existing, and then whatever money is going outside the fence line, that gets taxed.
Okay, second question is, you mentioned that both your departments in phase 2, you seem to defer to cost plus fixed fee. Do you have an assistance method to allow companies to get DCAA approved in order to make that a less onerous task?
So we do typically do cost plus fixed fee. We will occasionally do firm fixed price contract if there is a specific situation that calls for it. But we do prefer to do cost plus fixed fee. We don't specifically have a group that helps with that. However, the SBIR program as a whole has those resources available at a higher level. So that's something that should be out there for you to be able to take advantage of. But we do find that even though it may be difficult getting that first cost plus fixed fee contract, getting that DCAA approved accounting system, it is beneficial for most of the companies in the long run, because if you're going to continue doing business with the government and with the DoD in particular, you are going to need that down the road in order to get follow-on contracts.
Just to add to that a little bit, we did discuss it last week. We had our Navy program managers meeting with all of the syscoms involved. And about a month ago, I asked DCAA to come in and educate my staff on, what are all of the myths and try to dispel them about going through. I don't want to use the word audit, but that's what they call it, the audit. It's more of an assessment. So people tend to get scared by the word audit. But they did give us a pretty comprehensive brief, and we are going to be posting that on the Navy SBIR website. We just provided it to Navy leadership last week, so I doubt it's up there yet. But there is going to be a link on the webpage with that brief and some other information on who to talk to and what you need to do in order to prepare yourselves.
Hey, thank you. I'm echoing. There you go. So that's a great question about the DCAA, because I've seen folks that are true dual use technology companies. So they're commercial companies that want to be involved in the SBIR program, and they want to do FAR 13. I think it's FAR 13 commercial sales, right? They don't ever want to have DCAA approval because they don't ever want to be a defense company, but they do want to be dual use technologies and have the opportunity to sell into it. And once they go that DCAA cost plus fixed fee route, they kind of they kind of give up their ability to assert themselves at commercial rates. So I know companies right now with like Air Force strat buys and whatnot that have never done the DCAA thing because they are a commercial company that happens to be selling into the government, and they assert their commercial standing all throughout their process. Does that make sense at all, or is that bogus?
I'm not aware that having a DCAA compliant accounting system would.
Well, there's costs
right.
that you incur at the small business level going forward in perpetuity, and some people just don't want to do that.
Right. But I'm not aware that that would then stop you from being able to get those other types of commercial contracts. That would have to be something I'd have to ask an expert about.
Good morning. Thanks for being here. My name is Austin Gray, Blue Water Autonomy. Jason, you briefed that y'all have started working with VC-backed companies recently. I'm curious, like, what's different there? I understand the legality, like, is it actually a small business? But otherwise, is there a different profile, different type of work you guys see? Anything anecdotal?
So far, it's transparent to us, but the reason why we didn't do much of it in the past was there's very strict limitations on who qualifies as an SBIR eligible firm, size, ownership, where you do the work. Once you get into VCs, that's typically a larger organization, much broader range, could be headquartered in a different country, things like that. So it was just more complex and complicated for us to actually verify eligibility. But they've relaxed some of those standards and opened it up a little bit more.
But if you're, so it sounds like if you remove the eligibility concern, there's no difference for how y'all interact.
Correct.
Good morning. Just to follow up to that question on the VC eligibility, the DoD has a different eligibility standard for the number of firms that can qualify for those funds if they're VC owned. With you guys opening the door more to VC, is that standard looking to be relaxed at all, or up the percentage of eligible firms for those dollars to go to?
I believe that is the intent. I'm not exactly sure how our standards differ from the DoD standard. I would have to look into that if that one is more relaxed. But I do know that as we seek to be able to reach out to more non-traditional companies that have not typically done work for the government, that is something that we have had to start looking at is opening up to VC companies. So I'm sure that's eventually the goal, is to get to that point.
don't want to be a SBIR cheerleader, but I may and sound that way. Before I joined NavalX as a Tech Bridge director, I was COO of a small defense contractor that actually started out in a garage on a SBIR back in 1991 and is still kind of going strong. A couple of comments. Happy to discuss what it's like to be on the industry side working with SBIR. If anybody wants to, just come and talk to me. On the DCAA stuff, I've been through a couple of audits, can also give some been there, done that advice on that. But a couple questions for you guys is on the three questions actually, and I'll let you answer them, is on the open topics, are there any direct to phase 2 open topics? Second question is, the period of performance, if you go through phase 1 through multiple phase 2s, is like 7 years. Is there a way to compress those period of performances? And then third topic, if let's say my small business is acquired by, let's say, Northrop Grumman, do the SBIR data rights and sole source justification follow that along? So happy to listen, and if you need me to repeat the questions, just
All right, I'll happily take number 1, and then we'll see if we can remember what 2 and 3 are when I'm done. So in regards to the open topic, as of right now, our open topic does not include direct to phase 2. We do have conventional topics that are direct to phase 2. In fact, I believe in our 24.2 BAA that's out now, we have the most we've ever had. I think we have 6 of them in that BAA that are direct to phase 2 topics. Open topic right now still is phase 1, phase 2. However, the phase 1 portion is substantially shorter than a typical phase 1. A normal phase 1 is a 6-month contract. The open topic phase 1 is a 4-month contract. And that was done to try and get it to phase 2 a little bit faster. And because the technology for open topic is supposed to be at a much higher TRL level than a traditional phase 1. So we're really not talking about the feasibility of the technology in general, but how you would apply that technology to the military application. And so that is a little bit shorter, trying to get to phase 2 a little bit faster.
I don't remember question 2, so I'll jump to 3. Data rights in phase 3, it depends on when your contract was awarded. May of 2019 is kind of the demarcation date. If your prior work ended before that day, then you have what we lovingly refer to as zombie rights. 5 years from that date, you maintain your data rights. And once that 5-year period expires, then it's open, unless you get another contract within that period. That's why it's a zombie, because then it revives and your rights go on. If your contract was awarded after May of 2019, then it's from your contract start date for a period of 20 years, non-renewable. So you maintain your data rights for a 20-year period. And you were asking about how big?
On the acquisition. So then if you're there's another question. So if you're acquired by a large company, do your SBIR rights follow along with the acquisition?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other question was on the period of performance. Are you able to compress the period of performance? And the reason I ask that is my company actually was on a phase 2 phase 2s with NAVSEA, and then went on to be a prime on the SBIR contract.
Okay.
However, we felt we could have done the period of performance in 6 months, not 18 months, and we're just kind of like dragging stuff along, right? Is it able to compress it if need be and have that in the contract?
Yes, we're pretty flexible with structuring the contract. Typically, when we put out and ask for a proposal, we'll give you not to exceed numbers. Don't exceed this dollar value in this period of performance. But if you come back and propose, hey, we can do it in 2 years instead of 3, then that's the way we'll write the contract. Once you're under contract, I don't think there's any penalties for finishing early, so you can accelerate that way. We do tend to kind of err on the side of more time because we don't want to go through the administrative burden, especially with the level of contracting workload. We're putting on a very limited number of contract specialists to do extensions and things like that. So we'd rather build the contract more than what we need and then not use it as opposed to the opposite. But yeah, you can accelerate. And that's a discussion to have with your TPOC when you're writing your proposal and structuring the phase 2.
Yeah, same answer for NAVAIR. We tend to err on the side of having those longer contracts so that it stays open longer, so that it's more flexible, that we don't have to do extensions if things aren't meeting the original milestones. But that doesn't mean that we have to structure every contract the same. And that is definitely a conversation to have with your TPOC at the point that you are putting that phase 2 proposal together. We have a lot of flexibility in how we can structure our phase 2 contracts. And we're always willing to consider alternatives to whatever our default is.
How specific on a percentage number is invalidating a VC award of a SBIR 1 or 2? If the SBA has 50% of 50% ownership as a small business, what's your percentage on what a venture capital can own in a company?
Honestly, I don't know.
I don't know it off the top of my head. It is in the BAA though. It is, if you go out to the BAA that's out there now, that is listed in the BAA. It should give you specifically what that percentage is. So I apologize. I don't know that off the top of my head.
So my question was related specifically to if a company is awarded an SBIR phase 1 or phase 2, is there any restriction for them in leveraging a patent that's held by any of the warfare centers? Yeah.
To leverage a patent held by the Warfare Center? I don't know. That's a really interesting question. I'm not sure. It's a good question.
I think that it would be treated as GFP.
Yeah.
And we would just give you access to it, but I would probably want to run that past the lawyers just to make sure. But I don't think that there would be a problem with it.
Good morning, and thank you all for coming out to speak with us today. I know you guys are always really busy. Could you tell us a little bit more about the training program that you mentioned, and if you need any additional crash test nerds to help?
I think we will probably defer to Paul to talk about that this afternoon.
Perfect.
So if you'll be here this afternoon, Paul will be talking about the STP training program, and then Kelly will be talking specifically about the experimentation cell that the Navy runs. So ask them all the really tough questions when they get up.
Okay, and I did not see any, I think we answered the question from Brady online. So, all right, so what we're gonna do now is, networking and a break, really important. So we've got 30 minutes to network, go get some food, use the restroom. It's beautiful, you can go outside. And I will start calling you back in about 5 minutes to 11. So, and then we've got 3 more presentations before lunch. So get some coffee, food, mingle, ask questions, and we'll see you back here in your seats at 11.